Welcome back. Still talking about elections. We've got Mr. Fred Nzako. He's a legal practitioner and the public affairs analyst. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good to be with you. Good morning.
Still talking about elections. Let's take it off from where our last guest left it off in terms of seeking an alternative to the other two political parties who've been in power at the center at one point in time or the other. So he thinks that Nigerians, the problem, I did ask him a question, he thinks it's not about political parties coming together and forming one strong bloc to challenge this other two. The Nigerians don't vote. They keep voting for the same political parties. And he thinks, look, it's not about that something needs to change. What do you think about that?
Well, if you certainly need to change, politics is about people. And then the good thing about democracy is the freedom of choice. That's the beauty of democracy, freedom of choice. And that freedom is as enshrined, not just in the Constitution, but even in practice around the world. What are the choices before the people? That's the major question that one has to ask. And every political party is made of people. Who are the people? What have they put on ground? And they call it structure. In political language, it's called structure. What structure do you have on ground? How well has the concept of a party, how well has such concept permeated in the minds, in the psyche and mentality of the people? These are all the things that play out. And if a particular political party, for example, has been around for the past 20-something years, over time, it has etched itself in the minds of the people. Now, a new party will now come up, new in quote, because if a political party has been on paper but has not been able to win elections in the minds of the people, it is always new. And then you now say a new party. How well will that new party be able to upstage the ones that have been in existence for a long time? Even in America, that we practice its own type of democracy, there are not only two parties, there are other smaller parties. But you always hear of Republican and the Democrats. There are other parties, and those other parties are on the fringes. You now ask, why have those other parties not been able to win major elections in America, despite the freedom allowed by the system? The same thing will play out in Nigeria. It keeps playing out. Every now and then, at point of election, when election is coming, the so-called third force will emerge, and people will begin to say, oh, is that the third force that will upstage the existing ones? When election comes proper, the reality will be that the so-called third force will not be a force after all. So you will now begin to ask, political analysts will now begin to ask, why has that always been so? And do you think that it will be different in 2023? I can tell you that I doubt it very seriously.
But then how can these parties, because they pretty much disappear into oblivion immediately after the elections have been fought and won, how can they be participatory such that we can now have a virile democracy, not just when it is an electioneering season?
Our democracy is already virile because as long as there is freedom of association, as long as people can belong to any party whenever they like, freedom to enter, freedom to exit, it is virile and it is democratic. So the next thing, going by your question, is why has this new, in quote, ones not been able to win elections? And then why do they seem to go into oblivion after every election era? You sustain the party with funding. You sustain the party with the people. And you have to continue to have activities of political parties at all levels. And then the party will be seen to be doing what the people expect and what people want. That's the only way it will be sustainable. And then how can it be sustainable when that party has not won any election? Let me take, for example, you conduct governorship election, the party did not win any one, no seat in federal house, no seat even in state house. Who will now be the one to be interacting with the people? So it will now become a case of people coming together to hold the election, and then after election, everybody goes back. And then some others who cannot even sustain the system will find their way into the bigger parties. And that way, the fringes, the parties on the fringes naturally will collapse and disappear. Only for them to begin to gang up again when there is election.
Well,
That way, they will find it difficult to win elections.
Perhaps that's one of the reasons that there's been distrust of this third force that you talked about earlier, largely because people are wondering, where did you come from? Where were you 3 years or 4 years ago? But, you know, Chamberlain's first question is about the people.
Yes.
And let me stay there for a little while. And, of course, you know, something related to what Bukola also asked. We're talking about the leadership recruitment process here and how we can improve that process. It's the people that employ other people from among themselves to lead them. But you would also observe that over the years, the higher the number of voters, the lower the percentage of voters that come out to vote. And it's really, really disturbing. Now, people are generally, it would seem, tired of the current order, what some would call the old order. But then there is limited options, limited choices for the people to make. We are headed for another general elections now. And the same names, were some of the same names they've been hearing since 1999, are the same names out there. Are you in any way optimistic that we will have an upsurge of voters this time around? I'm asking that because that's the clamor. Everyone wants people to come out. No one has been able to interrogate the people who are the candidates. The people have not been able to interrogate the candidates that have thrown their hats in the ring. The political parties, the delegates, I don't even know if such a thing happens. We hear about screening, but is it how tenuous is that process? So are you optimistic that the people will indeed take the gauntlet this time around and go out to elect their leaders?
Naturally, Ayo, it is the responsibility of political parties to galvanize the people, to ensure that the apathy, voter apathy, is minimized, to ensure that more and more people pick interest in deciding leadership. But above all, what will galvanize such interest is when the people know and believe that their efforts will amount to something. That is, that their votes will count. And that now shifts to INEC. The very moment there is this confidence that when people's vote means something in the system, more and more people would be compelled, interested to go and cast their vote. So it's a double-edged sword. One, galvanize the people. And two, having galvanized them, allow their votes to count. So that in subsequent elections, they will not lose interest.
Are you suggesting INEC doesn't allow that happen?
No. Why I say so is because when you see the continuous decline in the turnout of voters over time, then you begin to ask yourself, why would that be? The population is increasing.
What role does INEC? What role does INEC play?
The number of registered voters is increasing, but then the number of the turnout of voters continues to decrease. So why should that be? It doesn't add up. It is supposed to be.
Now, why do you think that is?
Why I think that is because one, the propensity to galvanize the people is low among the political parties. It is very low. The political parties are not doing enough. And then even the ones that they have done, once there is an election and people believe, whether rightly or wrongly, that the candidate they voted for was torpedoed and some other person declared winner, they will not want to.
So wait. Again, you're suggesting people pick up, more people register to vote.
Yes.
But voter turnout drops.
That is, but that is reality on ground.
So you think that is as a result of politicians not galvanizing the electorate to vote?
One, not galvanizing the electorate adequately, and two, public enlightenment not being enough. The people should begin to see...
Public enlightenment, my apologies, on whose part?
On the part of both the politicians and the electoral umpire. And the government, through the National Orientation Agency.
Yeah.
Yes, through the National Orientation Agency, people should understand that going to vote is as civic as going to do anything that will favor them.
Let me ask Ayo's question.
If you have responsibility to eat and keep alive, people should understand that they also have that responsibility to vote and keep democracy alive.
Let me ask Ayo's question in a different way.
Yes.
With these, category of aspirants being churned out, it would seem as if we're reinventing the wheel, same of same. As a Nigerian, would you be encouraged to go out and vote with this candidate on parade?
The reality of our democratic experience is that we don't have independent candidates for now. You only vote for whoever the political parties have thrown up. Only. And that is why we keep asking that people should get more interested in what happens around them. If people know that a particular candidate is not good enough, and they say it, the political parties that will want to bring them will be conscious of that in one way or the other, and they will not put them forward for the vote of the people. And if they insist on doing that, people vote the other way and they will lose. It's a dynamic journey. From your experience of the past, you shape the activities of today, which will also shape your activities of tomorrow.
Well, you see, my apologies, Chamberlain. That experience of yesterday is one of the things Mike Igini spoke to, recently when we had him. So look, one of the reasons that people do not come out to vote is their dissatisfaction with the performance of the people they employed the first time. Yes. That at the end of the day, if people engage certain individuals to do some jobs for them and they are not able to deliver, what's the assurance I have that if I employ this next person, he's going to deliver on the job?
Much as I agree to that, we also have to know that the way the democracy of our Nigeria is structured, if, for example, 60 million people have registered to vote and only 1 million turn out to vote, only 1 million turn out to vote, and out of that 1 million, somebody scores 50-something% of that 1 million, making maybe 500 and something thousand over 60 million, he will still be sworn in. That is the thing we want Nigerians to understand. That whether you come out or not,
you have voted.
You have voted. Because if you don't vote, they will vote for you.
Nature abhors vacuum.
Nature abhors vacuum.
If you vote somebody and then he doesn't perform, it doesn't mean you should sit back. What you're supposed to do is you go out there and vote him or she out and vote the next person in. That's the way it works.
That's the way it works. So, and by the time people agitate, and then we begin to look at the process of removing the man or the woman that has not performed. That's a story for another day.
Well, Buki's question was tailored to asking, trying to get your impression about, so who will you be for the APC then? Who they throw up for?
well,
she said the candidates that they've thrown up. So who would yours be?
Now PDP has decided on their own candidate. I'm talking presidential now.
Yes.
APC is, the whole country and the whole world is looking up to APC.
Still aspiring.
Let's all are aspiring. Let's see who you are going to throw up. But then there's a dynamic. There's a dynamic that we must recognize. The dynamics of North and South, which started in 1914 amalgamation. And that dynamics means that what is good for the goose is also good for the gander. If you go north, you come south. It is not written, but gentleman agreement is an agreement. This is an agreement among the political gladiators. And the people seem to have sucked it in that when Mr. President comes from the north, the next Mr. President should come from the south. But that arrangement is an arrangement that is internal to political parties. And that is why PDP, in their own wisdom, in quote, have decided to go north this time around because their last flag bearer, who became a president in Goodluck Jonathan, came from the south. This time around, let us go north. And in going to north, who has not, which region or zone has not produced a president? They said it is not east. They now went to northeast and they have produced an Atiku Abubakar. That is for PDP. APC, as of today, the current president is from the north. And following the pendulum of north and south, the pendulum will swing southwest in internal affairs of APC. And then when they swing southwest, they will think, which region in southwest, in the south, which region in the south has not produced a president? Southeast. So we expect that if you go by equity, good conscience, and justice, APC should be thinking of going to the southeast.
Well, we'll explore that a little further in just a moment. Don't go away. Come back. So, when you say come to the south, having looking at what played out within the PDP,
Yes.
because I mean, some say, look, since you say it's among the political elites,
Yes.
these chaps were in PDP, many of them before they were APC, so a leopard might not change his spot. And then, I don't know if you saw Mr. Chidoka's piece where he did speak about those who did damage to that call for a president of Southeast extraction. He says, look, no one did as much disservice to that idea or that plan much more than 80 out of the 95 Igbo delegates who were there. Yes. So if you could rely on his perspective on what transpired, what's the guarantee that when you get to the APC, the same thing won't play out? And who do you blame if that happens?
Let me tell you, from 1994 Constitutional Conference that eventually gave birth to the 1999 Constitution, Nigeria was no longer talking about tribes. The very moment that God-given wisdom of Felix Ekwueme came out to the floor, it was a minority report, but it was adopted, that broke Nigeria geographical space into 6 geopolitical zones. That was a master stroke. And with that, we no longer talk about tribe. You can't be talking about Igbo, Hausa, Yoruba, Efik, Ibibio, TV, and the rest. You talk about zones. There are over 300 tribal nationalities, speaking over 350 languages in Nigeria.
What makes up the zones?
So what makes up the zones are the states.
What makes up the states?
The states are people. The people are tribal elements, yes. But then for political nicety, you don't talk about tribes anymore because we have tried that. And then there was tripod of Hausa, Igbo, Yoruba.
But
right?
If I
so that led to unnecessary tribalism in politics. Today we are talking about zones. So I better you tell me about Southeast zone than you tell me about an Igbo man. You better tell me about the Northwest zone than you tell me about an Hausa man or a Fulani man. Don't tell me about the Yoruba man in Southwest. Tell me about Southwest. Because that's what we talk about, zones. And I even belong to the school of thought that advocate that such zones should be made administrative centers. So that when we begin to talk about
before you get to that point,
then we now know what exactly.
Before you get to that point, I think if I understand properly what he was trying to say is that there's a method to the madness. Yes. So you have to, how is he going to drop on, how is he going to get to the Southeast? Will he just drop on the laps? There has to be lobbying. The people themselves have to demonstrate that, look, we are together in this particular scenario. So if people see that, they say, okay, well, if that's the case, if a lot of them think, okay, well, they want it, so why not? That seems to be the point he's making.
Nobody can say the people are not together. The people are together. And I tell you that no zone in Nigeria...
Were they together with the PDP?
No zone... that
the delegates?
No, look, the delegates may be thinking something else. I don't want to think about what the public is thinking about. What if the delegates...
It's not the public. I'm talking about the delegates within the party who voted for where the presidential candidate should come from.
What if the delegates were thinking about Northeast?
Oh, that's hypothesis. I don't know about hypothesis, so I can't speak to that.
So the whole thing, because until all the delegates come to tell you what they had in mind for voting for what they voted for, if they felt this time around the North-South swing, let us go to Northeast, how do you begin to argue that? So that by the time he comes back again, within PDP, he begins to talk about Southeast. All right? Because he comes to South. Because Northeast, North Central, Southeast are in the same wagon shouting that they have not produced the president. When you talk about zones, that's why I say I carefully don't talk about tribes because we have gone beyond issue of tribes. We talk about zones. And then these 3 zones are in the same vessel saying we have not produced a president.
If this
time around, it is the favor and the luck of the Northeast. The Southeast will be favored the next. And possibly North Central will be their turn. Now back to APC. We don't expect APC to, having looked at the issue of North-South dichotomy, the swing between North and South, to still think of North this time around. No. They should think of South. And when they think of South, they should think of Southeast.
Now you're talking about all the public ones, which you didn't want to go to all the public ones.
They think of Southeast.
You didn't want to go to the public before. But
that is what it is.
Because if you talk about zones, you know that so many people who argue with you saying, well, if you want to talk about zones, let's expatiate and say, well, North and South. So if it goes to South, wherever it goes to in the South, so that argument never ends.
No.
But
you can present it because if you are talking about balancing of power, equity, good conscience, and justice, you come to South, you think of Southeast.
All right, so we'll see what happens and how that plays out, because all eyes, as you said, is on the APC and see where will their candidates come from. Mr. Fred Nzako, a legal practitioner and also a public affairs analyst, thank you for your time. We know you'll be watching that keenly, so we'd like to hear your thoughts afterwards.
Many thanks.